Growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hey guys, it's Beth, just jumping in real quick again to apologize that there is an audio problem on this podcast and it's got a little bit of an echo. And everything will be back to normal next week. And thanks again for your patience.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Steve Rasner, and thanks for tuning in to The Lionhearted Dentist. Last week, and for the last few weeks, I've been focusing on that part of your practice that I've done many times in these podcasts that I think is the most essential to help you get back on track, especially during our return to work during the pandemic, and that is case presentation, and it has an amazing impact on what you do each day. I mean, how could anybody question that? I got sidetracked a little bit last week because I was talking about the 4 factors that make a great week or not great. It's always the same. And that was last week's podcast where I didn't get in literally what we're doing step by step. And so I want to get back to that early on in this podcast. But I had to do that. I had to do that because I want you to remember that when, I mentioned to you last week was not a great week for me. I've had pretty good returns in the weeks I've been back, but last week wasn't. And it's because I only had a few new patients. I had 3. And that's not a trend. I usually get about 8. No, I don't get 12 or 15. I hear unbelievable numbers sometimes from campaigns of my colleagues. I don't know whether they're accurate because we screen our patients. So let us be clear about that. We go through a screen, and one of my dear colleagues from abroad just wrote to me last week. They asked, what are we doing on that? And I can send you that. My name is Dr. Rasner at AOL.com. And don't judge me by that email address, by the way. I just don't know why. I just haven't gone to the Gmails and all the other things. So, oh well. And they asked, what is going on in that? I want to reiterate that as part of the case acceptance. And then I want to get into, again, back in that room, what's going on? And I mentioned something last week at the end of the podcast I've never said before. And that is, you could use your computer. When I'm doing this podcast with you right now, I'm using my MacBook Pro. You could go on, I think it's called QuickTime Player, and record yourself. Is your case acceptance so amazing that you have your presentation down cold? All the skills required to get people to trust you, to get people to value. Do you have all the models you need and the ancillary things we use, photographs, whatever, to make patients understand what we're recommending? And trust me, that's a podcast in itself. I once spent thousands of dollars, as I'm sure some of you have, on tremendously created videos to explain procedures to patients, implants, root canal, whatever it was. And I bought it, and I'll never forget it. I bought it at one of the national conventions that we all attend. And it was a very impressive, quick presentation on the floor to me. And I purchased it and used it about a week. And I found it was ineffective for me because I think I lost the patient's interaction with the human. In other words, you lead into, I'm going to recommend a root canal. And for that purpose, I want you to understand what a root canal is. So watch this video and I'll be back. That doesn't even sound good to me, to be honest with you. So I'm not using those type of things. It's all coming, and nothing I recommend is expensive. To make these 3D models, and it could be a model of your own, a denture that you created for a patient. Okay, so with denture patients, I have a very clean, very well done, like Pete Dawson would approve of it. Pete Dawson used to say, sloppy models are not an indication of sloppy dentistry. They're absolute proof. Okay, so we know how some of our models on our articulators can look, right? Well, I have one that's gorgeous. It's on an old articulator, upper and lower denture. I don't even remember how I got it, to be quite honest with you. I didn't buy it, it's mine. And whenever I have a patient with a terminal dentition case, perhaps, I go to this model, and it is if you had no other model, that's a good model to have, to explain where that patient is presently and what a denture journey may be like for them. It's not a trick. It's not to scare them. It's a truth. I'll literally, if I think that's the direction, the patient says, you know what, I want all my teeth removed. That's why I'm here. And I look at the x-rays and know that I could save enough to do a partial denture, or maybe they'd be interested in an implant case. That model will be in that room. I'll bring it over. And when I get to that appropriate point of the case presentation, I will say, let me begin by this. There are many patients that wear upper dentures, I said upper dentures, successfully. And I'm going to explain to you why. And I bring over the model. You probably never touched a denture. So this one obviously has not been in a patient's mouth. Here it is. And I put it in her hand. It's an upper. And I have the model in my hand, showing them how we can achieve a seal in the maxilla, and how that creates retention, and how some patients don't have well-developed maxillas, which compromise that retention, and that would be a good time for that conversation. That may lead next to implants. I mean, it's just a 3D model. It's not a video I created or purchased. I haven't done any of that. And then I have, obviously, models that do have prostheses with implants. I have them for zest locators, which I don't use in the maxilla, or I don't use it that much to begin with. I mean, my bottom line is, I think a denture on a zest locator is better than a denture without, but it's not as good as a denture on a bar retained overdenture. So the point is having models and 3D models is just a giant part of my case presentations on a terminal dentition patient. And I'll give you a good example of that in this podcast. It just happened to me this week. But let me go back, because that's what I wanted to begin with my colleague's question as to, what are we talking about in terms of patient interviews? And the question that she had was regarding the initial phone call. So let me take it back real quick to that point. When my new patient coordinator is putting in all the information and they get through all that, there'll come a point where she states, well, let me, get to know you a little bit better and ask you a few more questions about your mouth. Now, the reason we're doing this right now is we're also doing a screen. Like, I'm trying to get as much information as I can to anticipate this patient. How important is it going to be for me to have a spouse there, which is always important, but certainly if they're indicating need. When you start to ask patients questions, it provokes their own mind to start thinking beyond the primary reason maybe they called you. I mean, maybe they called because they broke a tooth. That's a common reason. Or they had pain. Maybe they've long since forgotten that they have other broken restorations, or they have missing teeth that may be connected to this next broken restoration, and let alone have not optimal dental hygiene and related gum issues that they're not thinking about on this given day that they called you. That's why you do this. So the questions really in our case have changed a little bit over the years, and they're going to sound really not profound to you. And I would encourage you to perhaps develop your own, but have 3 or 4. And the first one's obvious. So when was the last time you went to the dentist? I mean, my experience is most people haven't gone regularly. But I'm looking, has it been 8 years? Has it been 15 years? And remember, in the model that I have that I'm trying to impart to many of you, it's very often many, many years because they're fearful. And they know that we're the practice that sedates patients. I just can't tell you what a good marketing tool that is for you. Why more of you don't do it? I don't know. I guess I'm glad the guys within 20 miles of me don't use sedation. I actually have other dentists refer me. Really good patients that just needed a couple pills to do the work. Sometimes they refer me patients that need a lot more than a couple pills. And so we'll come back to that. And someone will ask, do you have teeth, any removable prostheses? She'll say, do you have any partial dentures or anything like that? And how long have you had them? If they say yes. And how would you say they're working for you? And it is with that tone of voice, where we don't want to come over too like we're suspicious of that they're not happy with it. We really want to know. And it does have an impact on me if they have a 15-year-old upper denture that they love. Okay, I want to know though as much as I can know. Do they have any missing teeth, and is that any concern to them? You get me? So last time you were at the dentist, do you have any removable partials? Do you have any missing teeth? Is there any teeth in your mouth that may be chipped or broken? They're not bothering you now perhaps, but you recall that that's the case. And then lastly, we ask, do you think your gums are as healthy as they need to be? Does that feel like a good part of your oral health? And again, this is done by somebody who just got done bonding with them. That's important. During the intake of other information, like wherever they live. You know, we have really good people that can connect. I think every practice has maybe one of those, and that's the one you want. Because it can be an instant turn-off for you. It is for me, and it probably is for you when you're calling any business that feels disconnected to you at that initial call. They keep putting you on hold. They're not even sure who they're talking to. When they come back to you, you certainly feel like you're at a place that has a lot of high volume in it, and that's not attractive to most of us, and that's not happening with this new patient phone call. Okay, that's the phone call. When they get into the office, you've heard me say, we redo that. Why would I do that? Because I've learned over my years that the information can change, as if the patient is in denial, as if we won't find out that there's nothing else wrong with them. I mean, that actually happens. I have patients say, no, this chipped tooth's the only thing I have a problem with. And so on my new patient report, that's what it said. Patient states chipped tooth, everything else is okay. And I do get a new patient Cliff Notes type of report telling me what to expect. Then they get to the office and there's just a litany of oral health problems that they didn't talk about. And I'm not kidding. I really think it's because patients are somewhat in denial as when they first make that call. Some patients are. So when they're back in the office, remember, now, much of the time, there's a significant other next to them. And the whole scene can go from maybe not too much new news to an incredible new thing. That maybe tears come out and the fear thing comes out, or embarrassment now. You cannot skip the in-office interview, which takes maximally 10 minutes. And how you approach it is, I know that over the phone I asked you a few questions. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page and have all that down. I've never had anybody get up in the middle of that and say, I don't want to tell you all this. They know why we're doing it. And we're doing it because we want to know as much as we can about what's important to them. So in the office, it's a review. So you told me over the phone you haven't been to a dentist in about 5 years. Did I get that right? All you got to do is repeat the questions that you had answered over the phone in the tone I just gave you. And if they're going to be different answers, which I would say at least half the time there is, you're going to get different information, then it's good information for the doctor to know when he walks in. He's not misled when he walks in into the operatory. And then you proceed with your new patient experience as you have it designed and developed in your office. So, I'm going to give you an example that happened just this week. I told you I would. So I had a 73-year-old couple, been married, I think they said 50 years. I mean, God bless them. I know I shouldn't judge people, but if I had to judge by what they were wearing, they certainly were simple people, both of them. They certainly had not spent any money on style or anything in that realm. Okay, and I can't help it. I know that they were clean. You know, it didn't look like they were living in a hotel night to night, but they looked very, very simple in terms of needs and things. And they were there because of the wife. And the wife had, I would say, I don't remember exactly, but 6 to 8 teeth in both arches, and had been told that she needed all her teeth removed. And they wanted my opinion. That's the story. Had gone to one dentist for all these years. He sold the practice, et cetera, et cetera. So I go through most of the protocols I've already reviewed with you in past podcasts. And when I get to the actual examination, what I'm looking at is a person that's got at least 4 teeth in each arch that had solid bone. When I see solid bone, I'm not thinking extractions. I'm going to at least give them the chance to retain these teeth. And she also was wearing existing partials that were dreadful. I mean, they had to be 15 years old. Even the maxillary one, which wasn't her chief complaint, did not stay in a little bit. And so I already knew that I could significantly, like you can, change and improve this patient's function by keeping her teeth without even getting into, and I'm trying to minimize in my head. I am. Number one, because I could. She had teeth I could keep. And the teeth didn't like all need root canal. In fact, none of them need root canal. They do need full coverage restorations. That's true. So I knew that was going to involve a financial commitment that she certainly had never made before. All these things are coming into my brain in a matter of a minute. I mean it. Simple looking couple. I'm sure I didn't go out in a parking lot, but I doubt they had a very new car. Never had a history, by looking at her mouth and x-rays, of any significant dental work. She had multiple missing teeth, a few decayed teeth that were non-restorable, and some really elementary, basic, partial denture removable dentistry. And that was just a no-brainer to me to talk about the approach, because remember, she had been told that she needed all of her teeth removed. So I had to approach that. So I had that model, my 3D model of a full denture. I'm very cognizant of my own body language, my tone of voice, am I looking in their eye? And I adapt to the personality that's in front of me. I don't need a book to do it. I don't think you do either. I think we all do it naturally, but there's 4 well-known personalities out there, and if you're not adept at it, I think the book is Tony Alexandra, Non-Manipulative Selling, is a very good book on the 4 personalities. She was quiet, she was shy, she was what you call a relator. She really wanted my opinion, which again is a really good situation. And so, and it was easy for me to speak, as it would have been most of you, with authority, as 99% of you would have looked at her and said, well, first of all, if a full denture is your only option, I don't think that's the best option on the table for you. And I'll say things like this. I don't know if this helps you guys, but it's in my head right now. I'll say, look, you go to a dental office, one of the most important things and functions of that meeting with that dentist is him understanding the concept of what to do when. It's exactly the words I use. what to do when. And that means, and I'm looking at this lady who I'm certain never had been talked to by a professional the way I'm talking to her, and her doting husband, which I liked, right next to her in the guest chair in each operatory. I used to have just sit them in a dental assisting chair. No one ever fell. I was always scared they'd fall off. That never happened. So a couple years ago, I invested in these nice chairs on wheels. They're really perfect. They don't take up much room, and they're comfy, and they have arms for the patient. And it's really nice. If you're going to do this the way I do it, it's better than a dental assisting chair for her doting spouse. And so I'm in there and I'm talking to her and I'm looking her in the eye and saying, listen, let me talk to you about dentures for a minute. And I went through that. I said, my goal with everyone, not just you, Louise, sometimes I would call him Mrs. Smith if I thought she was, I can't think of the personality type. It's the one where they're kind of aggressive, type A. I wouldn't call them by their first name unless I felt the permission to do so. Or maybe I would just ask them. But this lady resonated to me to call her first name. And it's easy for me, and I know it is most of you, but not all of you, to really get in and relate to these people that you just met a few moments ago. You can do it quickly. And I'm speaking to her and I'm talking about, well, look, here's the good news. And by the way, always tell them the good news if there's good news to talk about. They have horrible soft tissue care, red gums, purple gums, but they have a ton of bone. Talk about the ton of bone because it gives them options that they don't normally have. Okay? So, it needs endo, but it's restorable. If there's good stuff to talk about, then talk about it. And I did. I said, I got to tell you, you have tremendous bone. You have the bone that you had when you were 25 years old. All they just heard me say is that they were 25 years old or look 25. And it's always a good thing to say something like that. And I said, here's what I would do if this fit in your life. And it's going to require an investment you haven't made before. And I'm going to tell you why. You're wearing a partial denture. So then I went to my model of partial dentures. And I always say this. I say, when a patient tells me they have a partial denture, it's like telling me they have a car. I don't know what kind of car they have because that's how many different partials there are. And you have the type of partial that is on a scale of elementary, it's very elementary. And here's how it stays in or doesn't stay. It stays in by the contours of the teeth, the shapes of the teeth. It's exactly how I talk. That it's clasping. So let me talk about how we can improve this for you. Before I did implants, and that's the first time I mentioned implants to her, I said I always would do these things called precision partials because they fit better. And this is why they fit better. And I have a model of that. And I'm speaking to her and her husband who's right in on it. Look, sometimes you have a husband or wife that's knitting or on their phone. They're totally disengaged. And then it's a much harder job for you to engage them. And I would try to engage them. I've had husbands be mad in the corner because their wife made them come to the appointment because I asked them to come to the appointment because they are going to be late or missing their golf day. And I get it. So you're damn right I engage them. And a lot of times I will say in the very beginning, I said, let me just tell you why I'm so appreciative that I have two of you here. This office is a lot different than most offices you'll ever go in. And I'm positive you'll think that's a good thing when I'm done today. I don't know what you're going to do or not do. It's up to you. But there's a lot of possibilities for you today if you're unhappy with your present condition of dental health. There's so many things you could have today. And it's obviously it's up to you. But I want two people hearing me. 4 eyes, 4 ears, because it's better for you to make informed decisions. And that's how I'll approach the reluctant spouse in the room if that happens. But this guy wasn't that guy. He was all over it. He wanted the best for his wife. And so I went on to discuss. I said, you have the perfect scenario except for one section of your mouth. And that was her lower left, where I only had one tooth. I had a nice cuspid to work with, and we all know that there's partial denture designs in the history of dentistry for one cuspid here and a cuspid on the contralateral side. So it's certainly not a contraindication. The tooth did not have root canal or need root canal. The problem is I personally don't like one abutment holding a partial. And on the right side of her mouth, I had 3 teeth I could keep. It was just an intuitive gut reaction by me that I wanted to keep her away from implant dentistry. It was based on my observations of everything I experienced with those patients, the intake information, visually what I was seeing, and the fact that she had 4 good teeth in her lower jaw. And you know what I said? I told her the truth. I said, look, I haven't even talked about implant dentistry, which opens up a whole world of possibilities for us. I don't love having one abutment for your partial. I don't. But if something goes wrong down the road, if that tooth becomes a problem, which I don't think it's going to, and I don't, I can always add an implant on that side or replace it with an implant, and you won't miss a beat if that happens. And if I made a wrong decision, and I repeat to you, I don't think that's happening, I would certainly credit your account with something, because I think it's my responsibility to make these decisions and help you guide you. So long story short, guys, the upper was, I needed to crown all 4 abutments up there for the partial denture I was making up there. And it was a significant case. I mean, it was, I don't mind sharing with you, it was an $18,000 plus case. I didn't know that at the time I'm speaking. I never know what it is. It's always more than I think it is. It's the truth. Because I don't hold back. I do what I really think's best for that given patient. Listen, if she had multiple root canals and good bone and needed a partial denture, I would have included implants in the case. Or maybe I would have reasoned that the teeth days are over and it's either going to be an upper denture or an implant retained denture. Fortunately, I didn't feel the need to even go in that direction. I didn't have to. But I like giving you, write to me and tell me if this helps you when I give you this case of the week scenarios and how they're unfolding for me. Look, I didn't know it was going to unfold with success. This is day 1, folks. This isn't 2 or 3 consultations. Remember, this patient already had 1 consultation. And it was fortuitous for me that I didn't agree with the treatment plan so I could give her something that really is going to work out amazingly for her. I mean, I had everything going for me. Good quality teeth that I don't know why they were taking them out. Teeth that simply needed 1 procedure. That procedure would be a crown and a core buildup. Didn't require root canal, in other words. Having 2 partial dentures that I have no idea how she's maintained function with them at any level up to now. I don't know how, so I had everything going for me. Sometimes we don't have that. Look, and I realize that, and I want you to put that in perspective. But that is the given situation I had in that case, and it's likely to come across your desk in operatory at some time. And that's the approach I took. And as you heard, the approach was sincerity, earnest, looking in her eyes, caring about this patient. Look, if the patient was incredibly strapped financially, and this has happened, upper and lower dentures, I probably wouldn't have even done that. I probably would have gone to the famous bendable Valplast partial dentures that that's a Hail Mary if you ask me. It's Hail Mary because some patients love them and some patients don't. And, it doesn't require a whole lot. And maybe in this case, because what she had was such poor function, like it was a kind of partial, it didn't even actually fit down on her teeth. So I don't know how she even kept it in. So this was a gift in terms of case presentation to me. But think about, I want you to close with thinking about the words you use, the body language you're giving. I wouldn't use that body language with everyone. If she came in as a alpha type of patient, I would be much more matter of fact and give the not as empathetic maybe, but more factual as to why we need to do what we need to do. I think one of the dilemmas for a lot of us is when we have a patient that hasn't had any sophisticated care. They have intelligent, they have a good job, they have a good income, and they have many large restorations that probably should have been crowned. And now they need a crown, and they've been insurance driven. One of the challenges we have is that we have sophisticated dentistry is not necessarily in direct proportion to their socioeconomic background or their education. We all know people, I certainly do, with a ton of money, a ton of education, with dreadful dentistry in their mouth. Now, if that dreadful dentistry is working, I mean, 6 surface amalgams that they had done 30 years ago, and, maybe has some stain, but I can't find caries on it. No, I'm not going to recommend that patient change that. And I'll talk like that. But if they break that restoration, and that's why they're in their office, and they never had a crown before, and maybe they even need a root canal, that's asymptomatic. I mean, does it get any worse for you and I? Now you got to tell the patient who's never had anything done before, but some mercury stuffed in their mouth. Now you got to tell them they need a root canal that they don't even have symptoms about, and a crown. And that, you better believe we could talk about this case scenarios just for infinity, because there's so many possibilities that go with the personalities that you have to approach accordingly. That's why I'm doing this with you. I hope it helps, man. Again, the patient I had in the chair this week I just responded to was a relator. Let me just say this. In all cases, you're always going to take up to the time you walk in the operatory is not going to change. I don't care if they own the local gigantic company and they're coming to you. That initial visit with your new patient coordinator, the questions, and maybe you'll have a different tone of voice or direct them a little differently, but they're being asked. When they come through your office experience and the way they're welcomed. Hi, Mr. Jones, we've been expecting you. Welcome to the office. Harder to do today, by the way, with a smile on your face when there's a mask on it and the pandemic on everybody's mind. I get it. But they're going through that. They're going through the new patient interview in the office. They're getting charted and x-rayed before you walk in. And you're always going to look at some point at 5 factors. And the 5 are, I never vary from this, the health of their gums, and we explain it to the patient. And I'll review this next podcast quickly, but it's worth hearing. Because the 5 factors guide me and guide you as to what you're going to say. So I will say to them, at some point before I do my examination, I'll say, one of my most cherished educational acquisitions as a dentist, or something like that, is a concept called what to do when. How do I know it's the right thing to recommend to you? Because we both know, I'm talking to the patient, there's 2 types of dentists. There's very aggressive dentists that probably over-treatment plan some patients. And there's also good old Dr. Joes who always tell you you're fine even if you're not fine. And everybody loves that dentist. He has a 30-second, million-dollar personality by the chair. You never have to spend any money or do anything. So naturally you love him. And that's not the way to go either. Because when he retires or sells or moves on, you don't want a host of needs that you didn't know you had to deal with when you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. The truth is, what you want is the truth. Somewhere in the middle. What do you really need? What would serve you best by treating it now versus waiting? What doesn't have to be done? That's exactly how I talk to a patient. And, the 5 factors are their gums, all their teeth need to be looked at. And we explain why I do each one. and it takes a little time, and I'll do it in the next podcast. Do they have missing teeth, and is that even connected or related to them at this time and why they came in? How about their occlusion and their bite? These are all giant factors that each of them can dominate and dictate what's going to happen in that case presentation. And yes, there's sometimes I clearly can't do it in one visit, but the longer you're in practice, the more education you have, the better you are figuring out what the patient needs quite quickly, to be honest with you. It really is the number one advantage of being in practice longer and acquiring CE and experience. And then the last one for me is always aesthetics, because that's always an up to the patient thing. Having a very developed skill set is obviously important, because it means I don't have to refer patients, or you don't have to refer out for our surgical needs or whatever you're into. In your case, it could be molar endo needs or ortho needs. Obviously, that is tantamount in importance. But even if you have the most amazing skills in your community, in your state, in your country, if you can't communicate at the moment of truth, if the patient has a reason not to trust you because you can't look them in the eye, or your body language is I'm too busy for this, and you're just number 5 of new patients on my list today, then of course most patients aren't going to want you to be the treating doctor. And even 40 years into this, that's really important to this doctor. Hope this is helping, guys. I'm going to continue with this direction for a while till I find that I think I've covered it enough, from this phase that I've been approaching you with. I hope you guys are hanging in there. Please write to me. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week on The Lionhearted Dentist.